cat. Oh,
Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy, and joining me this morning maybe is Hartwell.
well,
So,
maybe I'll have my cat talk this morning.
yeah, there you
My
go.
cat is doing cat things and disrupting my work.
So we have part 2 of the Ring of Divinity today. So can you just do a quick review of what we talked about last week and then dive into gate 63 and 22 to finish it off?
Sure. Hello, folks. Sorry, I feel a little bit scrambled. We talked last week about the Ring of Divinity and how it is made up of 4 gates, the 37, the 36, the 22, and the 63. And we talked about 37 and 36 last week, which, 37 is about the journey from weakness to tenderness. And 36 was the journey from turbulence to compassion. And we saw how these 4 seem very connected to the whole mythology around enlightenment or the raising of consciousness. And there's a theme that seems to be even more so than the other, all the other gene keys, a message around suffering and the importance of suffering as some sort of catalyst for our journey. So that's kind of where we got to. And now we arrive at gate 63. And gate 63 is unlike those others that were all in the other 3 are in the solar plexus. So of the 4, this is the only one that's not, and it is in the head center. Remember from our past talks, the head center is about it's about a pressure to make sense out of life, okay? And it is a journey from doubt to truth via the way of inquiry. And it is the pineal gland, the head center. And this is the pressure that arises out of doubt. The dark night of the soul, in some ways, is a very apt description for this one. Although we could say that about many, and that's the paradox of looking at some of these gene keys. But, self-doubt and doubt itself is meant to be creative. It can be very creative, but of course it can also be very destructive. And at the shadow level and the shadow frequency, it undermines us. It can express as, dogma, being dogmatic and opinionated, because these can be outgrowths that, these can be the behaviors that we adopt when we're trying to cover up our own self-doubt. Does this make sense to you, Kris?
Well, not really, but the part about where you can turn that self-doubt inward instead of looking outward, that part makes sense to me. And because when you do that, then you have no room for creativity. And it's hard for that creative force to come forward because there's so much going on internally and the doubt that you feel internally instead of looking at, why am I here? What's the purpose on the outside? And trying to make sense of it. You're doing it on the inside, and it's very self-destructive that way. That makes sense. But
yeah, because if you start to inquire about life, you can then tap into an energy that helps you feel creative, where you start to engage with life in a way that opens up a journey. And I mean, when we talk about yoga, as most people think of it, the path of yoga is a path of progressive, sequential, reliable progression. That's what yoga is about. And And when we engage with yoga, any kind of yoga, that's really what we're engaging with. And it's one of the primary, it's one of the most familiar approaches to spirituality that we talk about, that is well, talked about.
Yeah, I would
So,
think meditation would not be a very good route for somebody with this gait because all you're going to hear when you're in meditation is all that self doubt.
well, that's at the shadow level,
Yeah.
right? If you turn that self-doubt towards inquiry into how you're made, how you function, then it
Hmm.
becomes then the energy shifts into the energy of inquiry,
Hmm.
which is the gift frequency, and then it becomes very powerful.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that would be the difference,
Hmm.
you know. But there is something, because this is a gate of logic, we begin to realize at some point that logic is circular. Logic doesn't logic doesn't lead anywhere. And that's what can make this, the journey and the work with this gate so disheartening
Hmm.
is, but if you keep following the inquiry and following the inquiry and following the inquiry, it frees you. It frees you from falsity. And it leads you inevitably towards truth, even though truth is paradoxical.
Hmm.
Logic always undercuts itself. It's kind of like if you're this incredibly logical person and you're using it just from a ego standpoint, you can find an argument to support anything that you want, right?
Hmm.
But truth is a frequency, and so eventually it opens up into that frequency.
Yeah, it's kind of like the internet. Like if you want to find anything, you can find something to support it or something to not support it or disprove it, right? It's like it drives you crazy when you go searching sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, like the Buddha searched and searched and searched and searched until he got exhausted from searching.
Hmm.
And that's when the enlightenment happened. So this is kind of the process
Hmm.
that has been so well documented, more so than many of the paths towards the cities. This has been
Hmm.
documented. There's a
Right.
whole, there's a whole lore, there's a
Hmm.
whole body of knowledge, very deep and very expansive around yoga.
Hmm.
So that is the 63.
Hmm.
And as anybody with the 63 knows, that doubt can be cause enormous suffering.
Yeah. So there's a lot of pressure that goes along with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you have that gate and
Hmm.
and the channel that it's also belongs to.
Yeah. Creates a lot of stress.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
The 22 is a little bit more fun to talk about.
That's your favorite gate.
I do
Or
like
one of your
22.
favorites.
I do like 22.
Hmm.
Um, the 22 is in the solar plexus pointing up towards the throat. And its shadow, or the journey of this one, is the journey from dishonor to grace via the way of graciousness.
Hmm.
And so at the lower level, what is dishonor?
Hmm.
This shadow is part of what makes the mythic drama of life so compelling to us. It's so romantic. The romance of suffering is gate 22 in some ways.
Hmm.
36, you could make a good argument for that too. The
Hmm.
turbulence.
Hmm.
But it's like all of the drama of life has one pervasive theme, and that's redemption.
Hmm.
It's like, what will release us from our suffering? What will redeem us? What will make us feel like we are not broken?
Hmm.
So, there's a relationship between this gene key and this the idea of memory, or the idea of the Akashic records.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like we feel like there is this weight that holds us back from being this weight, or this whole. There's so many reasons, so many things that arise in our consciousness as to why we are not okay.
Is this like kind of like, I feel like it's like kind of forgiveness? Like the you have to be gracious enough to offer the forgiveness as well. Like, I mean, if you're in that place of, all of that dishonor, and you've acted that out, and the shame
Yes.
and everything that goes with it, I would think that there has to be like that forgiveness. They talk about forgiveness a lot, which to me also goes along with grace, right? That's part of grace, is being able to forgive.
Well, they're certainly connected. And I mean,
Hmm.
the interesting you bring up forgiveness, it's the city that relates to gate 4,
Hmm.
which we haven't spoken of yet, but 4 is opposite the 63.
Hmm.
But in this case, dishonor is about distrusting life itself.
Hmm.
When we refuse to accept responsibility for our thoughts, feelings, and actions, we dishonor life.
Hmm.
It's kind of like we judge it as somehow being wrong. Oh, why am I in this state? Why am I having these emotions? Why am I suffering? There must be something wrong here.
Hmm.
And so this feeling of wrongness, this feeling of distrust of life, causes us to try to fix or change our moods rather than flowing with the process of life.
Hmm.
And so, in a deep way, we, in a sense, I think of Job when I think of this a little bit. It's like, why me? Why
Hmm.
this?
Yeah.
I don't trust this process. I don't
Hmm.
trust life. I don't trust my emotions. There's this sense of distrust here.
Hmm.
That's what I get. Um, and so we have all these feelings, and we don't know what to do with them. Do we fight against the feelings? Do we try to fix the feelings? Do we trust the feelings? We don't know what to do, and we're caught up in that.
Hmm.
And eventually, it can lead us, if we let go of our fear, then we can move into a kind of a graciousness, which is the gift.
Hmm.
And this is a willingness to consider the feelings of others. It's a willingness to honor the times in our life in which we're touched.
Hmm.
We're touched by something we see on our Facebook page, all these sentimental things that come by that, oh my God, that touched my heart. Or somebody shares their story with us and that touches us. Or we realize that as much as we might be wrapped up in our own suffering, other people are in their own journey as well. And we start to be more gracious about our
Hmm.
own process and about the process of others.
Kind of reminds me of that saying, like, it doesn't matter how bad you have it, there's always somebody that has it worse and somebody that has it better, right? And if you can just rest in that and know that this too shall pass, is kind of like, everything is temporary. Your states, your emotions, your circumstances, they're not forever.
Yes. And we can then create some space around that.
Hmm.
Um, and I think space is a good word here. It's like when we get to the gift level, there's a space that opens up where we're not so self involved.
Hmm.
Um, so we begin to realize how touched we are. If I share a story of mine and that somehow touches somebody else,
Hmm.
that's an indication of graciousness. It's an indication and It points to the fact that we're all connected in some way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it allows us to kind of get some space from or free ourselves up from these negatively charged emotions. And then we can start to feel where the balance might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a lot of talk in Richard's Rudd exploration of this about the divine mother energy and how it's more and more becoming talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And it is related to this idea of grace and the initiations that we go through. The seven seals, you know, that are talked about that arise out of the book of Revelations in the Bible are related to grace and are related to this gene key. And so there's these passages that we go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's one of the most universally beloved songs that has ever been created is Amazing Grace.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because somehow we all know what that is. We have those moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And grace is the city. Grace reaches down from heaven and touches us.
Mm-hmm.
And to be in that energy of grace is to be in that energy of willingness to receive, willingness to be connected. Because sometimes in our pain and suffering, we want to deny our connection to others, deny our connection to God, deny our connection to reality. And so we act and choose a dishonorable way of looking at life. And grace is what repairs that.
Yeah. So we're just about out of time here. Is there anything else that you want to say about the Ring of Divinity as we wrap up here?
I don't think so.
You
I
think
mean,
you've
there's
said
so
it
much
all?
more that could be said and shared, and you know, we could swim in that energy.
Well, that's
Um,
why if people have those gates, they need to come and sit and have a conversation with you.
yeah.
So, okay. Well, if there's nothing else to share, then we'll sign off.
Well, I will just say that next week we start to dive into what's called the Codon Ring of Humanity.
Oh, that should be
And
interesting.
there are 6 gates related to this codon ring,
So I'm assuming that's more than a one part or two.
probably.
So, anyways, okay, everyone, we're going to sign off for now. God bless, and we'll see you next week as we dive into the Ring of Humanity. And remember, if there's any of these that you have that you want to dive into, Hartwell's here at Clarity. Come in and you can dive deeper and go deeper into your charts with him. You can call us at 587-596-3333 or just go online and book an appointment yourself. Have a wonderful day. God bless.